Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing another deep dive.
That's right.
And this time we're plunging into, well, let's just say a pretty fascinating and, yeah, highly contentious moment in American governance.
Hmm.
Our mission here really is to get a grip on how those lines between executive power and, constitutional limits get drawn. Or sometimes redrawn, right, in
Yeah.
real time.
Yeah, it's a constant push and pull.
And we've got a really powerful lens for this today. It's an excerpt from an address titled Trey Gowdy's Fierce Warning to Obama About Threatening the Constitution.
A very direct title.
It is. And the speech itself is, well, it's a direct, very public challenge to a pretty significant presidential action. So it
Yeah.
gives us this vivid look at how these big constitutional arguments actually play out, on the ground.
And I have the core question for you, the listener, in this deep dive is really this. When one branch of government feels like another is maybe overstepping its constitutional bounds, well, how does it push back?
Yeah, how does it assert its authority?
Exactly. What are the actual tools,
Yeah.
the mechanisms? And maybe even more importantly, what arguments do they use when the stakes are, this high?
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. The speech kicks right off by targeting a specific executive action.
Hmm.
The speaker calls it, and this is a quote, one of the largest extra constitutional power grabs ever by a chief executive. Strong words.
Very strong.
And the action itself, it was a unilateral declaration. It basically said that almost 5 million undocumented aliens will receive deferred action under some newfangled definition of prosecutorial discretion.
Right. And what's really crucial there, as the source presents it, isn't just the number, 5 million. It's the scope of the action.
Okay.
It wasn't just, okay, we won't deport you right now. The speech emphasizes it was about actively bestowing benefits such as work authorization and immigration benefits.
Ah, okay. So more than just pausing deportation.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Normally, prosecutorial discretion lets the executive branch decide which cases to prioritize, maybe defer action based on existing laws. But the argument here in this speech is that this specific action stretched that idea way beyond its normal meaning.
Like creating new policy.
That's the implication presented. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like creating policy where Congress hadn't acted. And that, of course, immediately brings up these huge questions about, well, where are the limits of executive power?
And here's where it gets particularly interesting, I think. The speech highlights this really stark contradiction.
Uh-huh.
It points out that the, quote, very same president over 20 different times said he lacked the power to do what he just did.
Wow. Over 20 times.
Yeah, and also that he repeatedly said he's not a king. So you have this really vivid contrast laid out between what was said before and the action that was eventually taken.
And that's not just, political inconsistency, though that's part of it, maybe.
Mm.
It really highlights this ongoing tension, doesn't it?
Oh, so.
Well, it's that practical conflict between a president's stated view of the law,
Yeah.
maybe even their genuine belief about limits, and then the political pressure or desire to act on a major issue.
Right, especially when Congress is gridlocked, maybe.
Exactly. So they end up pushing the boundaries of what they previously said was possible. It forces you, the listener, to think about how presidents navigate that gap between I can't and I did.
So, okay, given that background, that rhetorical shift and the big action, how did the speech actually frame the constitutional argument against it?
Well, the core argument presented is pretty blunt. The Constitution has not changed. Simple as that.
Okay.
The speaker really hammers this point, saying that document is clear, time-tested, and true, and then lays out the basic structure, arguing that this body, meaning Congress, passes laws, and it is the responsibility of the chief executive to make sure that those laws are faithfully enforced.
A take care clause.
Precisely. So the action is presented not just as, a disagreement over immigration policy, but as a fundamental danger to what the speaker calls constitutional equilibrium.
Constitutional equilibrium. Okay.
Yeah. The insight there is that the speech tries to elevate the argument. It's saying this isn't just about immigration. It's about whether the president is effectively writing law from the Oval Office.
Which would upset the balance of powers.
That's the core of the warning, that it fundamentally alters the separation of powers, posing a deep risk to the balance the founders intended.
And the stakes, as laid out in the speech, seem really high. The speaker warns that if these kinds of unilateral extra-constitutional acts are not stopped, well then, future presidents will no doubt expand that power of the executive branch. It really makes you think, doesn't it? how actions like this, once they happen, can set precedents, powerful ones, for whoever comes next, regardless of their party.
Oh, absolutely. And that's not just a theoretical worry. You can look back through history and see how executive actions, even ones that were really controversial at first, can kind of solidify over time.
Become part of the toolkit.
Exactly. They become part of the presidential playbook, sometimes cited later as justification for even more actions. So it raises that critical question. If a perceived overreach isn't effectively challenged, does it just inevitably clear the path for more expansion later on?
Sort of gradually shifting the landscape without any formal amendment.
That's the concern being raised, yeah.
But what I found really compelling, too, was how the speaker tried to reframe the whole fight.
Ah, yeah.
They say very explicitly, this is not a fight between Republicans and Democrats. Double negative there.
Noted.
It's not even a fight over immigration reform. Instead, the claim is it's a fight over whether this branch of government, Congress, will ever find the courage to stand up for itself.
And that reframing is, well, it's strategically pretty significant, isn't it? Especially given how polarized politics usually are.
How?
Well, by saying it's not about party politics, the speaker is trying to lift the debate, trying to appeal to this sense of institutional duty, institutional integrity.
Right. Trying to unite lawmakers.
Yeah, unite them around defending Congress's own constitutional role. The argument becomes, the threat is to the legislative branch itself. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. It's an attempt to, cut through the usual partisan noise and focus on what the speaker sees as a fundamental structural problem.
Okay, so if the challenge is that fundamental, affecting Congress's own role, what specific tool did the speaker propose Congress should actually use?
Well, they point right back to the Constitution,
Makes sense.
emphasizing that the Constitution gives this body certain tools, and then specifically names one, tools like the power of the purse.
Ah, the classic congressional check.
The classic. And then comes the punchline, pretty much. It's about damn time we use that tool. Very direct.
Very direct indeed. So the power of the purse. Explain that a bit more in this context.
Sure. I mean, it really is a cornerstone of checks and balances in the U.S. system, right? It's Congress's exclusive power to control government spending, to decide where the money goes.
So theoretically, very powerful.
Theoretically, hugely powerful. It's the lever Congress can use to influence or maybe even completely block executive actions it doesn't agree with or thinks are unconstitutional.
But I sense a but coming.
Well, yeah. There's the theory and then there's the practice. What often gets glossed over is just how incredibly difficult it is politically to actually wield that power effectively.
Like threatening a government shutdown.
Exactly. Using the power of the purse in that kind of direct, confrontational way often leads to brinkmanship, shutdowns, huge political fallout. It highlights that while it's constitutionally potent, it's kind of like a nuclear option. It's not a tool you can just use routinely without major consequences.
So it underscores the challenge Congress faces in, actually reining in executive power, even when it technically has the authority on paper.
Precisely. The will and the political cost are often the bigger hurdles than the constitutional text itself.
And just to wrap up the specifics from the source, this speech didn't just talk theory. It added with a very concrete legislative call to action for the members listening right then.
That's right.
It urged them to oppose this motion, to recommit, support the underlying bill. Now, for anyone not steeped in parliamentary jargon.
Which isn't most people.
Right. A motion to recommit, basically, is often a last-minute move by the minority party. It's a tactic to try and change a bill or sometimes just kill it off before the final vote.
So calling to oppose that motion was essentially a strategic move within the legislative game itself, aimed at getting a specific bill passed that was likely intended to counter the executive action.
Exactly. A direct counterpunch using House procedures.
So if we try and connect all this back to the bigger picture, this deep dive into just one speech, one moment, it really does lay bare that constant dynamic tension right at the heart of the U.S. government.
The dance between the White House and Congress.
Yeah, the ongoing dance, or maybe sometimes struggle, between executive power and legislative authority. It's this constitutional tug of war that shapes so much of how the country is actually governed. It's always shifting, always adapting.
So thinking about this deep dive, what does it all mean for you listening? I think ultimately it's a reminder that these debates about the Constitution, they aren't just, dusty academic arguments.
Not at all.
They have real, tangible effects on how our government works, how policies get made, and ultimately how individual lives are impacted. Understanding these kinds of high-stakes fights, the arguments used, the tools available, it's pretty essential for understanding the kind of the operating system of our republic.
And maybe it leaves you with a question to chew on. As you look at what's happening today, in the news, where else do you see this delicate constitutional equilibrium being tested?
Or maybe, sometimes, being maintained.
Or maintained, exactly. It's a question worth keeping in mind well beyond the specific fight over immigration or executive orders we talked about today. How is that balance holding up right now?